Greg McElroy, ABC, ESPN college football analyst, former Alabama quarterback, led Bama to a national title in 2010. Greg was on the call for Notre Dame, Florida State on Sunday night. He's got Texas at Arkansas. That will be coming up this Saturday at 7 Eastern. Greg, thanks for joining us. Great to see you again. Let me start with our poll question. You can win a national championship or you can be the Heisman Trophy winner. Which one would you take? Since you've won a national title, would you trade in the 2010 national championship to be named the Heisman Trophy winner?
I think your ability to live on forever as an individual would be better as the Heisman Trophy winner, Dan, but I would never trade in my national championship knowing that collectively we're able to earn that together. You know, just like you and the Danettes. Like, would you really trade an individual accolade? But is it better to achieve something?
Hold on for a second. We got a bad connection. I think I actually heard him say that he would rather win the national title than the Heisman. So I know there was a bad connection there. Greg McElroy back with us. All right, Greg. So there was a communication, connection problem because I actually thought you said you'd rather have the national title than win the Heisman.
I love that you're trying to say as if I was crazy in answering that. I said I would never trade my national championship in for anything. The Heisman would potentially make me think twice, but no. The national championship is something that we earned collectively, Dan. While, yes, as a Heisman Trophy winner, you get to cash in Nissan commercials. You get to do a lot of amazing things, and your individual legacy will live on forever. But collectively doing something together, a la the national championship, man, come on, I'm not trading that in. No way.
When you go back to Tuscaloosa, do you have to buy dinner?
Depends on how nice the restaurant is. And knowing the quality of the restaurants that we have in the beautiful city that is Tuscaloosa, yes, I have to buy dinner quite often. But yes, I've had to buy dinner. Drinks, however, usually those come free of charge. As long as you leave a pretty decent-sized tip.
But when you played at Alabama, you didn't have to buy a dinner or buy drinks.
That is inaccurate because NIL at that point, as I appreciate you trying to connect the dots and lead me down this dangerous path. Every time I come in on here, I go viral for something remarkably inappropriate. And some comment will live on in infamy forever because of something I say with you guys. So, no, I'm not going to take the bait on that one under no circumstance.
But name, image, and likeness, your final season at Alabama, how do you think you could have cashed in?
I think I would have done pretty well. I don't know to what extent because some of the numbers that have been thrown out here, at that point, social media was early, right? It was very much in its infancy. Like you couldn't use Facebook to create a revenue stream. Twitter was just getting underway. So yeah, while you had following, the access to the player and the people would not has been as significant. But yeah, on signing autographs and appearances, it probably would have been in excess of six figures. Probably fairly comfortably, too, when thinking about the promotional opportunities that you would have had within the state. I mean, we were the first national champions in 17 years. So being the starting quarterback, it probably would have been fairly lucrative.
Who had the worst weekend in college football?
The ACC. As a whole, the Pac-12 would be a really close runner-up, given the inexplicable loss that Washington had as a top 20 team, as a team that prides himself on their offensive line and getting pushed around by an FCS opponent. But I would say those two, by far and away, had the most disappointing performances. The fact, and here's just to put the ACC's performance into perspective. A lot of people are saying the finest moment for the ACC came on Sunday night in what was a moral victory by one of their blue blood schools. That, to me, gives you a sense of where the ACC is at. And I'm not saying Florida State wasn't impressive. They were remarkably impressive. The team's made a ton of progress, and I'm proud of them for the effort that they put on the field on Sunday night. But that gives you a perspective of where that league is right now with the top-to-bottom lack of quality that they have throughout.
What about LSU losing at UCLA?
I can't say that was surprising. Dan, I mean, LSU had struggled on the defense side of the football last year, but I think this was as much about UCLA being legit. I mean, this is a UCLA team in year number 4 under Chip Kelly that started a bunch of freshmen 4 years ago and were awful. But then you started to see them make some strides. And then last year, we actually did their game against USC, Dan, and they were a team that I thought to myself, like, man, if not for COVID, what could have been? But with the challenges that they had and the Pac-12 not starting until early November and having a weird fall camp, it was almost as if they had their growth stunted as a team and as an organization. But now fast forward this year, and all the pieces are starting to come together. They have a lot of veterans. They've added a couple pieces via the transfer portal. And Chip has created a scheme running the football that is almost impossible to defend, especially with the running backs running as hard as they are and a quarterback that can carve you up occasionally when on the move throwing the football. So I actually think last weekend's performance, while it was a disappointing performance for LSU, I actually came away equally impressed by what UCLA did.
How hyped up should Alabama fans be with Bryce Young?
I don't think Alabama fans need any help hyping themselves up. Every year, this is the greatest team in the history of the world. But this is obviously after a weekend in which you saw some teams really not put together complete performances. I mean, Dan, against quality opponents, you could probably count on two hands how many really dominant performances there were by teams on both sides of the football. Like, from what one team might have done offensively, they struggled defensively. That would be, let's say Oklahoma, using them as an example. Well, some teams dominated defensively and struggled offensively. We'll use Georgia. So, I mean, there's plenty of teams that are looking at themselves in the mirror on Monday saying, man, we left a lot of opportunities on the field on both sides of the football. Alabama was one of the few teams that really looked complete, both offensively and defensively, and if you want to go one step further, in the special teams game as well. So it should be no surprise that Alabama, with the talent that they have, they're always going to be as good as anybody in college football. But to be that good that early, I think that was a little bit of a warning shot to the rest of the world that's watching them play at a level that not many people can replicate.
Does the targeting rule work?
Oh, yes, it does. But we need to do a better job as a sport making sure people understand it. Like, there are broadcasters and people and coaches that don't understand the rule. And I think that's occasionally frustrating because people have a difficult time understanding why it's called targeting. And just because it's helmet to helmet, Dan, doesn't mean it's targeting. It doesn't mean it's an automatic ejection. And it doesn't mean that the refs are against your team. It's not. Helmet to helmet happens almost on every single play. But in order for it to be targeting, you have to have, one, an indicator, which is initiating contact with the crown of your helmet, or you have to have a launch or an upward thrust. So think about a player launching upward towards the head or neck area of a defenseless player. Those are the two indicators. If it's one of those two indicators, it can potentially be targeting depending on where the contact and the forcible contact takes place. So I think we need to do a better job as a sport educating people, and I don't think people want to be educated. I think in some ways people don't really want to learn the rule. They just don't like that it's not the barbaric Ronnie Lott, I'm going to take your head off across the middle type of game that it once was. It's just not that way. We're trying to keep players safe. And we have actually, Dan, seen changes in players' behavior. Now, week 1, week 2, week 3, you see a lot more targeting fouls because guys aren't as dialed into tackling fundamentals. But as the season goes along, you'll see less and less. So, yes, last night was eye-opening. 4 targeting fouls in the first half alone in that Louisville-Ole Miss game, some of which were inexcusable, where guys are just leading and spearing with the crown of their helmet. So it works, but I think we need to do a better job making sure people understand why it's targeting and how we reached a targeting rule and why a guy got ejected, and it could potentially affect them not just for this game but for the next game as well.
Talking to Greg McElroy, former Alabama quarterback. He is a college football analyst for ESPN and ABC. You were on the call for Notre Dame and Florida State. How would you sum up Mac Milton's comeback story?
Man, was that crazy or what? I mean, you, as someone that was watching the game and just sitting there, because I can tell you what it felt like in the booth, I would like to know from your perspective, Dan, as someone that's consumed a ton of sports, what was it like knowing the story and seeing him back out there almost orchestrating one of the most amazing comebacks we've ever seen?
Well, I remember having him on the show when he was at Central Florida, and then he had that devastating injury, and it's almost like a ghost reappeared in a different uniform, and you go, oh, my God, Mac Milton is back on the sidelines. And then he goes into the game, and whoever your director was on that game, showing his parents, that just made it all work, because you saw that parents can only do so much. You're watching your son. You probably deep down don't want him to be playing because he nearly lost his leg, weren't even sure if he'd even be able to walk. Now he's playing, and you're there watching it in person with the doctor who performed the surgery. It's crazy. I mean, that's something out of a movie.
It's almost as if you put it in a movie, Dan, people would say that's too far-fetched, that's ludicrous, it would never happen.
Yeah.
But it was happening right there, right before our very eyes, and it was unbelievable. And to see the shots of his mom, I want to give credit to Jeff Evers and our amazing camera crew. I mean, Jeff Evers, our director. I mean, to capture that moment and to see his mom uncontrollably crying. And then at the end of the drive, as soon as her son got off the field, you finally saw her exhale. You can only imagine what the anxiety was like. I was nervous. I mean, with no rooting interest whatsoever. I was a nervous wreck. Like, oh, my God, don't hit this kid. Like, give him a black jersey. He's untouchable. Don't hit him. You know, so it was like a level of anxiety that was tough to really comprehend, while also trying to be professional within the broadcast. And yet, internally, all of us rooting for Mackenzie Milton, not to win the game. It was just rooting for his health, rooting for his satisfaction of completing this long, arduous comeback. Man, it was insane. I've never had an experience like that in the booth. It was almost an out of body experience to see that. And of course, he didn't win the game. Notre Dame hung on and did what they needed to do down the stretch. But man, just to see the magic in the air that night, on the first night in which they're playing a football game in Tallahassee after Bobby Bowden's passing. And then you just have the magic of Mackenzie Milton, who has always been a magical player, but a magical player now on a completely reconstructed leg. It was something that I will never forget. It was absolutely unbelievable, and you're 100% right. It was a movie script we were living out right before our very eyes on national television.
If you see Jeff Evers, tell him great job. I wasn't sure who the director was, but knowing Jeff at the mothership, when I worked there, congrats to him. That was great. And we're having Mac Milton on the show tomorrow, so should be fun. You'll be
tell him as if he didn't need any more fans, but he got about 8 million more fans on Sunday night after the performance, and just the heart that he displayed. It was unbelievable.
Greg, great to talk to you again. Thanks for joining us. Tell Joe Tessitore we said hello.
Sounds good, man. So good to talk to you guys. Miss y'all. Hope y'all are doing well.
That's Greg McElroy. He'll be on the call with, let's see, he's got Arkansas and Texas. At Arkansas, that'll be coming up Saturday night, 7:30 Eastern.